Good good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, good
Very
afternoon, everyone.
warm,
Hi
very warm
guys.
welcome to everyone here. Can I see everyone saying hi on the chat box? Is the chat box enabled? Yeah. Everyone, if you can just say a hi or a hello in the chat box. Hi Tanishi, hi Nishka. Hello everyone. Hi. So before we start, guys, I'd like to make sure that everyone knows how the flow of the event is going to be like. So we'll start off by introducing our guests and the speakers. We'll then be presenting a PPT where we have a flow of the event for each and every one of you guys. We'll have a question and answer round at the end as well, where you can directly talk to the speakers and get your doubts and difficulties cleared. I expect and I really plead all of you to make this session as interactive and as interesting as possible. So please do use the chat box, unmute your mics if you want to, and just make sure that you have fun and make it interesting. Um, so let me introduce our first panelist for the day. We have Ayush Kukadkar. I'm sorry if I pronounced it the wrong way.
It's all right, it's all right.
He is a graduate from Symbiosis Law School, Pune. He passed out in 2019. He's working in ICICI as a legal manager. We have Shravani Joshi, who is a graduate from Jindal Global Law School. She passed out again in 2019, and she's working in the legal department for Techstar. So in a normal session, in a normal offline session, we'd have each and every one of you clap and applaud them. So why don't you guys unmute your mic and do it? Or if you just want, you can put on an emoji on the group or reaction. Thanks, guys.
That's
I
really
see
sweet, guys.
Kam and everyone doing that. All right.
Yeah, that was very unexpected, but yeah, great.
Okay. So before we start, let's have a little analysis of our audience. Why don't you guys put on which standard you're studying in currently on the chat box? Thank you, guys. Right. So majority of our
From
participants
10th to
today are
12th.
from 10 to 12. Exactly. Perfect. So let's start off the session. We've welcomed the just a second. Right. So to start off, before we get into the details of law, let's just understand what the importance of law is and what are the roles of a lawyer. Ayush?
Yes, Arnav, before we start, I would like to thank you for that kind introduction. And I would like to thank the 𝐸𝐴 Alumni Association for organizing such an event. I had the pleasure of speaking at Insight, the first version or the first, the one that happened last year. And I'm glad to be here today also. Like Arnav said, that we are making sure that this event is extremely interactive. We aim to iron out all the creases that you may have in your knowledge as to why you want to do law or any questions that you would have regarding it. Please make sure that you understand that there are no silly questions. In fact, it will be silly if you do not ask us questions. So please pour in all these questions. And I'm sure that this year we are going to have more. We are going to be able to give you more insights into law as a profession because we have Shravani also. Shravani and I shared the same bench in 7th standard, and I'm glad to share this platform with her today. Shravani, do you have anything to say before we start?
Yeah, thanks Arnav and the entire Alumni Association for having us. And yeah, it was great of Ayush everyone to just come along and make this session happen. We hope that we're able to provide you with the kind of value and insight that you need to pursue your careers. I know that many of you would be wondering whether to pursue law, or some of you have already decided. So yeah, like Ayush said, there are no silly questions. Go ahead and ask everything that you might want to have, like even the silliest of the silly questions. So yeah, and I hope to have a great session with all of you.
Right. So to start off, I don't think that we need to tell you what law is, because you have a personal interaction with law every day. We all operate around the four corners or four pillars of law, and all of us have some level of legal knowledge. For example, you know not to spit in public. You know that overspeeding is a crime. So we all have some level of legal knowledge, which is important to live our lives. However, we need to understand that law essentially is an enabler. It enables you to perform tasks, be it for your business, be it for your personal self, be it to protect your rights and exercise your liberties that way, right? So this is a broad view of what law is. Through this session, we are going to cover how different businesses also use law, and what does a lawyer do, and how does a lawyer enable any ordinary citizen or a business to reach their goals by analyzing and by helping them implement the law. Shravani will take you through the role of a lawyer in that process.
Yeah. So when you think of a lawyer, guys, I'm gonna just take you through the lens of a company. For example, if some of you want to start a business tomorrow, so you will need a lawyer to incorporate your company, because it'll either be a company or a partnership. So you will need to have documents in place. You will need to have your agreements, rights, and obligations of both the partners in place. So this is where a lawyer comes in. And even when a company is functioning, you need a legal advisor at all the stages to advise through board meetings, to advise through any transaction that the company is entering into. And even when the company has been functioning for a long time, there are times when a company or like an organization enters into disputes. I'm just using company as an example because I've worked with companies before, but company is not the only entity. There are other entities like trust or even individuals for that matter. So sometimes a company or an individual gets into a dispute with another person, and that is where the law also kicks in. So you need a lawyer to settle disputes or to argue on behalf of the clients. And then the dispute gets carried over to a court, where again the role of a lawyer becomes important, because all of your judges are qualified lawyers. So yeah, you will interact with lawyers everywhere. And when we think of lawyers, we only think of, say, corporate lawyers or litigators. Litigators are those lawyers who go to courts and argue. But lawyers are also very, very active in the field of journalism. For example, in academia, there are a lot of lawyers who are professors in policy advocacy, in politics for that matter. There are many lawyers who also crack the UPSC. So the role of a lawyer is not just limited to your corporate lawyer or your litigator, but there is quite a lot of scope within law to pursue a different career or an unconventional path for that matter. So yeah.
Right, because it is non-optional in a way that it is not an option not to follow law, or ignorance of law is also not an option. So this way, you essentially, as a lawyer, like we discussed earlier, will be an enabler to the goals of the business, will be an enabler to the goals of an individual. And I think through this session, we'll take you as to what are your options and how can you get into law. So Shravani, if that's all right, let's go to the next slide and understand why we chose law as a profession.
Yeah.
Right, so thank you. So a very important point that I just wanted to reiterate is that law and lawyers are everywhere and in almost every field that we touch upon.
Yeah.
Now,
And
I'd ask you why you chose law as your particular career field.
Shravani, you would want to go first?
Yeah, I'll take that. So I wanted to become a pilot until I was in the 7th grade, and I don't know what changed in the 7th grade, but people told me that, Shravani, you have a very arrogant and dominating personality. Why don't you pursue law? You'll be a good fighter. You argue well. And I don't know, somehow I started believing that even I should be doing law. So although my reasons were very, very unconventional, and I don't think that those are the right reasons why one should choose law, but I ended up choosing law. And as I went ahead, as I was in the 9th and 10th grade, I actually started looking at it as a viable option, because as a lawyer, you're not just a jack of one trade, you're a jack of all trades. Sometimes you may or may not be the master of like one. So that was one of my main reasons why law got sold to me. I thought that if I enter this profession, I will be able to get into corporate, I'll be able to get into policy, I'll be able to do whatever I want. I might also want to get into journalism at some point of time. So I thought to keep my options open, law was the best degree to get into. So yeah.
Right. I wish I could say that I started I wanted to become a lawyer to fight for justice, but sadly that's not the truth. Why essentially I wanted to do law was because I was really interested in all these corporate transactions and all these commercial activities that surround us. And when I used to read the papers, I used to be very curious as to say if I read that there was a particular deal or an investment in the company, I used to be very curious as to how this happens, how this functions. And you also feel very empowered personally when you know the law, because you know what is the correct position and what is not. So that feeling is very good. At the same time, I will not lie and tell you that it is also a viable career option if you do the right things, get into the right colleges. From a monetary point of view also, it is fairly decent. So that was also a motivating factor for me. Apart from that, like Shravani said, that when we are kids, we have a lot of soft skills that are very raw and probably need more fine tuning. So I also realized very early that I was very articulate when I used to argue, or I was very logic and point centric, and I thought that I have a raw skill that I need to further nourish, and that is why I went to law school.
Thank you so much for that. Now, can you just run us through a normal day in a lawyer's life, from beginning to the end of how it goes, of course, pre-pandemic? And what do you guys do on a daily basis? What are your responsibilities, your obligations, and all that? Shravani, if you want to go first.
Yeah, sure. So for those of you who don't know, I used to work in law firms. I worked in a law firm for almost 2 years, and the life of a lawyer in a law firm is very different from that of a litigator. So right now I will focus on what a lawyer does in a law firm. An ideal day usually starts at around 9:30. That is when you reach office. And obviously, given in Bombay, given the traffic condition, your day starts way earlier than 9 o'clock because of all the traffic. You go to office and you already have deliverables in place. So you start working on them. Depends upon whether you're doing a transaction or a due diligence. Due diligence is basically a process where you investigate a company, its agreements, to see if there are any red flags that one should be aware of before buying stake in it. So the role of a junior associate varies because the junior associate is expected to do all the groundwork, all the heavy lifting. For example, drafting agreements, proofreading, going through all the agreements while doing a due diligence, reading each and every clause of it. And this is what a corporate lawyer does. There is also a lot of research involved, because while drafting a particular clause, you need to know whether that clause is going to be legally viable or not. So you end up going through various case laws, and that is quite a tedious process because you're basically shooting in the dark. You don't know if there is an answer or not. So it can be quite a time-consuming process. So a day usually goes on drafting, researching, doing due diligences. If you're a couple of years seniors into the profession, you have your juniors. You will have to review their work. You will have to delegate, review it. If there are any mistakes, then you also end up correcting those mistakes or asking the junior to correct them. So it is quite stressful. It is quite overwhelming and, needless to say, fast-paced. But then at the same time, if you really like the work that you do, you end up enjoying it as well. So if you love your job, you don't work a day in your life. That is something that I believe in. So if you're that kind of a person who likes a fast-paced life, who likes reading through agreements and, doing legal research, then I feel corporate law is good for you. But yeah, coming back to what the day looks like, when I was working in a law firm, my day used to start at 9 and it used to end around 10, 11 on like decent days. But then there were bad days as well, because I used to stay back in office until 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And then when you're working in a law firm, you don't really have the luxury of telling your senior that, hey, listen, like I worked overtime on day 1, day 2, like, can I please, is it okay if I come in a little late? That usually, although your senior will understand, but like it's not really appreciated if you do that, because as a junior, you're expected to put in the hours because that is how you learn. The more hours you put in, the more trials and errors you do, the more you learn out of it. So yeah, that's how a corporate lawyer or a lawyer who works in a law firm, their life looks like. And it depends upon the firm also. So if you're in a smaller firm, obviously your responsibilities would be bigger because you'll have a smaller team. And if you're in a bigger firm, you will have minute responsibilities, but the volume of work will differ. So although the hours remain the same, the quality of work really changes, and it depends upon the firm that you work in.
Right, thank you. Ayush, what about you?
Right. So like Shravani said that that this is a typical day in the life of a corporate lawyer. Now you need to know that there are different types of corporate lawyers. There would be one who works at a law firm. A law firm essentially has multiple clients and they are working for multiple companies or multiple projects at the same time. And there are various teams for that.
Yeah.
Similarly, there is an in-house practice where, say, for example, at either ICICI or JSW or wherever, or Reliance, all these big companies, they have their internal legal team. And their work is slightly different compared to what you do typically at a law firm. Although both the teams, like the in-house legal team and the law firm, interact very closely to make sure that the outcome is delivered. Right, so the onus is on both of them. So essentially, for me, compared to the long working hours that Shravani is talking about, luckily that was not a situation. My day would typically start at 9 and end at 7:30, 8:30. But of course, you have bad days. You have bad days when there's a transaction, it has to go on, and you have to deliver. But in the life of an in-house lawyer, essentially you are the gap between the the external counsel, which is Shravani in this case, and the interests of the business. So before you do any act, you have to spend a considerable amount of time understanding that what are the business interests. Because see, law is universal, right? Law is same for everybody, but which course of action or which course of law do you select to reach the business goal is what you as an in-house counsel have to enable the business in determining. So they would go on with business meetings, then handling the current issues of the business, because there would be, say, we would be getting sued for copyright infringement, we would be suing for copyright infringement, or day-to-day activities regarding labor, factory. So all these either notices are coming in or we are writing notices. So there used to be a considerable amount of time spent on that. Further, I would also enable the business team to enter into transactions, commercial transactions. So either if it's a coal purchase transaction, or probably it's an M&A transaction. So we used to assist in that. I had a wider role because I used to also help the company manage its litigation. So formulating litigation strategies, understanding that what approach to take, which lawyer to take. Is this the right judge who we should go against, or should we wait back and try to defer our listing? So there are a lot of angles that you have to keep in mind when you're working as a lawyer. And like Shravani said, that all these are high stakes. So for example, if you are like Shravani was in a tier 1, or you are in a top tier or a big company in India, everything that you do is high stakes. So you can't be very casual about anything. Like if somebody is coming up to you and asking you a question, you can't say that I think the answer is this. The second you say I think, the person stops listening to you, and that's not something that's acceptable. So you need to be very precise as to what the law is and what is the correct position, because you are the one who is responsible and the onus is on you, essentially. So I don't need to scare anybody, but this is something that you, of course, develop over years, where everybody makes mistakes. I'm sure Shravani would have. I know I have. And then you just improve on your way there. But like, since I think we've given you the a day in the life of a corporate lawyer, I think we should go a little behind about how you reach here and what is a day in a law student's life like, and what all do you need to do, and what is the ideal law school journey to reach this point. But before that, if you have any questions regarding what we have said, Anna, if there's anything that we want to take right now, then we can do that also.
Right. We have Sakshi asking us something over here in the chat box.
I couldn't read that.
Hi, Sakshi. What do you think?
I see somebody's raised their hand up also. Arnav, you go ahead if you
think
you
it's
ask us the
better.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll with Saki's side. She said, what do you both think is better, pay package wise or time consuming as a corporate lawyer? Joining a law firm versus joining an in-house team is basically the crossover question.
Shravani, you want me to take that?
I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So essentially, it again depends on where you're going, right? So if you're going to a tier one, which must be 4, 5 law firms, they pay extremely well. When I say it's in fact at par to your top engineering placements and all of these, they pay exceedingly well. The bonuses are very good. You can even say that all these tier one, Shravani, please correct me if I'm wrong, all these tier one partners, if you're very good, you become partner in say 10 to 12 years, they earn north of 1 crore at that stage, right? And
It actually depends if you're a salaried partner or an equity
yeah,
partner
or
in
equity
tier
partner.
one law firm. Yeah, so if you're a salaried partner, you obviously won't be earning as much as an equity partner. As an equity partner, you will have stake in the firm itself. You would basically be, taking from the profits of the company or the firm for that matter. So yeah,
Right. So you
go
make
ahead,
good
Ayush.
money there, and you make good
Yeah.
money there. Similarly, with a company, if you're going to the top companies, you will be making a good amount of money. In fact, at the start, it would be at par with some of the leading law firms. But your growth will not be as fast as that of a lawyer in a law firm. You will not reach that mark, say, in 10 years. It may probably take time, but at the same time, in terms of it being lucrative, there are various other things also. Like for example, in a company, you have an option of an ESOP also. And if your company something is performing exceedingly well and you receive those ESOPs at the right time, you would be in for a treat later on. So that is also how it works. But of course, the amount of effort or the amount of time that you will be spending in a law firm is different from what you would do in-house. So you have to weigh all these things and not just the package. I'm sure that right now you are asking this question from a point of view where you have not started. And when you start, trust me, you realize that it is just not about that CTC. I'm not trying to be philosophical here. Money is everything, but it is just not about that CTC. You have to look at your entire life also.
Yeah.
I hope that answered your question well. I think Mishka had a question.
I want to share something. Can I?
Please.
Oh, go ahead.
I've taken. I want to take a law as a career, and mainly because of being an activist in environmental and animal rights. Beside that, for earning purpose and putting those money in use of animal rights and all. So I've taken class. I'm doing class, and I find it difficult to cope up with the school part and the CLAT part. Like school part is a theoretical part I can learn, but the CLAT part I have to function my brain, and I have to put up lots amount of time into it to get perfect and score a rank, and I to a nice college. So, any advice?
Yeah, I think Mishika, like I'm sure like a lot of people face the same issue that you're currently facing. You have your school on one side where you're learning theoretical subjects, and then you've got your CLAT where it's all very practice oriented. You've got to practice every day. You've got to keep yourself updated. But yeah, it is a challenge that most of us face. And the way I dealt with it was like I had a timetable in place. You have no option but to remain disciplined and consistent with your timetable. You devote a certain number of hours to your school and college. You come back, you revise, and then you remain consistent with your logic, say GK or English. You go, you solve your issues. Like you divide your time in like small bits and pieces. Like for example, today for half an hour, I have to know what all happened in GK. So consistency coupled up with sincerity, I think it's the right formula to just go ahead. Like there is no other option but to like have dedicated timetable and dedicated time set apart for everything. So that's how I went about it while preparing.
Right. I think what Shravani says is correct. Like there is no substitute to consistency while cracking these exams. You need to do it day in, day out. And in fact, I'm so glad to hear that you are so inclined to go towards the law for the right reasons. And to carry forward what is required, and environmental activism is really required at this point. And you at the same time, see, you need to understand that your 12th marks, I'm not saying that, hear me out again, I'm not saying your 12th marks are not important. Okay. Remember I said that it's not that it's not important, but at the same time, there is an entrance exam and there is a cutoff that you require to be eligible for that entrance exam. So beyond that, your 12th marks will obviously serve you later if you want to do your post-graduation and all of that. But right now, your 12th marks will make you reach or make you be eligible for taking CLAT, which will determine which college you go to. So in terms of balance, you have to be very practical in how much time you allocate to what. Because everybody likes getting like a very good percentage in 12th, but no, I don't recall anybody ever asking me how much I've gotten in 12th. Frankly, yes.
Right. So before we move ahead from this slide, there's just one question that really catched my eye. And it said that it was from Manya. She asked, how close is real life law to Suits? Which I think the web series. And I think that's a very common question in the minds of a lot of people. So I usually want to talk about it.
Yes. So I totally understand that you've seen Suits and it seems nice and it seems very attractive, but I don't mean to burst your bubble. It's not how it's not real. Okay, it's not real. See, of course, the terms that they use, the transactions that they are talking about, those happen in real life, right? Or for example, you would see, I've also seen Suits. I love the series, but I watch it as a series, right? So that is how it should be watched. Like for example, when you would see a Harvey throwing a file at a mic and asking him to prepare something, and there's a cut and you see him coming with the answer. When that cut starts, that's where a lawyer's life starts, right? That's where you go back to the table. You are going to be dumped in files. You're going to start your research, and it doesn't happen in that 30 seconds where you come up with a quick, quirky reply. Also, by the way, a side note: if the way Mike speaks to Harvey, if you ever even try to do that, you'll be fired on day one. So that is the clear difference. Shravani has worked at a top tier law firm, so she'll be better equipped to tell you what is the exact difference also.
I mean, obviously Suits has hit the nail right in the head when it comes to the glamorous part of corporate life. You do get to, eat fancy dinners and brunches with your clients. But all of that only starts when you're way into the profession. As a junior lawyer, there is no way, at least in a top tier law firm where you have like a huge team, you're not going to be able to go to lunch and dinners with your clients. If you're in a smaller setup, you have a lot more responsibility. Your team is limited, so you do get that opportunity to go. But then in terms of the hustle that goes into becoming the sort of lawyer Mike Ross or Harvey Specter, both of them are, they do not show the hustle as much as it is actually required in real life. It is not all glam. It is not all, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. No, the glam is only, say, around 4 to 5% out of your life as a corporate lawyer. The rest of the 95% is pure sweat and blood. So it is very, very different from what you see in Suits. They don't show you the kind of research that goes into it. They don't show you the due diligences. They don't show that Mike Ross in an ideal law firm in India would not only just be reporting to Harvey, he would be reporting to 10 other people. He would have 10 other deadlines to match up. So that is something that Suits misses out on. Yeah.
Right. And it's showing some, and of course, there you would see that Mike is gifted and he remembers everything. But all of us are not as fortunate to have a photographic memory, and you will have to really put in a lot of effort. Like when Shravani says, I think both of us are very aligned on this, and we have spoken about this, that you need to be in for putting in a lot of effort, because there is no substitute to that. You can't say fake knowing the law, or you can't come. It's not like, say, for example, in a marketing role or in an MBA role where you can come up with ideas. You can come up with ideas how to use law, but you can't make new law, right? So you need to know what is right and there's no two ways around it, right? So we were Arnav, we were going to life as a law student. So if there are no questions regarding that, we'll take that.
Yeah, I don't think there are any relevant questions as of now. I think most of the questions will be addressed as we move ahead. So
Avani, I think
you can talk about
you can go ahead.
Before that, there was just one question that caught my eye. It is, who or what are in-house lawyers? So I think Mehak has asked this question, and in case everyone has not, caught on to it, in-house lawyers are lawyers who work for a company, and these are always lawyers who are they work in the in-house department of a company. They advise the board of directors. So they work for the company. They are employees of the company, and this is as opposed to lawyers who work in corporate law firms. Lawyers who work in corporate law firms, they work for the firm. The firm has multiple clients, and the companies are one of those clients. And the lawyer in a corporate law firm will always interact with the in-house counsel of that company or the client. I hope that has clarified your question, Mehak, before we proceed further.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so coming back to the day in the life of a law student, I'm glad that Ayush had this idea to, talk about this, because your 5 years in law school are going to be the most crucial years of your legal journey. These 5 years can make or break your career. How you utilize your time within these 5 years is going to be very important. And these are for two reasons. Number one is that you understand what the law is. Number two, you learn how to put in the hard work that is necessary to excel as a law student. Because as you start working hard from your law school days itself, it becomes easier for you. And one of the most important reasons why I suggest that everyone should take the law school life very seriously is because it creates a network. It helps you create a network. And your network is going to be your net worth. So once you start going to law school, there are a couple of things you should keep in mind. Number one is grades. You should never, when you start your law school, please make sure that you always do your best to make sure that your grades are up to the mark. And second is taking part in extracurricular activities. In a law school, you will have extracurricular activities ranging from debate, theater, moot courts, writing research and publications, and also internships. I think internships is a huge part of your law school as well. So these things have to be kept in mind, and these activities have to be taken seriously. But as a law student, you obviously have your classes, you learn everything. It depends upon the degree also that you take. If you take a BA degree, then you will be studying humanities. If you take a BCom LLB degree, you'll be studying accountancy and other subjects. There is also another degree called BBA LLB, which is very important, I would say, when it comes to if people want to choose corporate law as a career. I think we'll come to the degrees later, but then just as a law student, you will be writing your exams, you will be doing your assignments, you'll be writing research papers. Research papers are papers where you think about a question of law, you go research, you go back to how the question of law came about, and there is a lot of thinking that goes into it. So you write papers, you publish them, and this is one of the reasons, this is one of the factors when it comes to recruitment. It depends upon how many papers you've written when it comes to recruitment. Coming back to the point, basically, while being in law school, you should always be careful about taking part in such extracurricular activities which are going to help you in terms of recruitment and also further education. So yeah, grades, writing papers, moot courts are going to be a huge factor. For those of you who don't know what moot courts are, these are competitions where you prepare as an advocate, you present arguments on an actual question of law before a mock judge. So these are very, very well reputed. These competitions can be well reputed in India also, and they can also be abroad. So Ayush, do you want to take over?
Yes, sure. Like life as a law student,
Yeah.
so we need to understand this especially. That
Yeah.
there are 5 years. Okay, if you start after 12th, there are 5 years. Now imagine yourself if you are in 10th, how were you in 5th? Okay, so like it's a huge time. It's a huge time. Of course, you develop later, and the difference will not be as much as you would have from 5th to 10th. but it's a huge time, right? And you get a lot of opportunities to make sure that you develop as a lawyer. When I was answering this, I read somebody asked that why are grades important? So I'll come to what Shravani said, that see, grades essentially qualify you or show the recruiter or show whoever you want to work with that you know your subject, right? Because the last thing you want is that if you're a talented lawyer and say your grades are not say a particular cutoff for your dream job, even if you have the skills to make sure that you outperform everybody in that job, but since you do not focus on your grade, it will be a bar for you to enter that particular job. So that is why essentially your grades are important, and of course in the process there is a lot of learning. Personally, I also spent a lot of time with my extracurriculars. So I used to also manage fests in my college. I have done a lot of client counseling competitions. I've done a lot of mediation competitions. We'll get to what is mediation and all that later. But this really shapes you. It really shapes you in a way where your interpersonal skills, your ability to think on your feet um, um, is developed, and you require all this as a life in the life of a lawyer that we just told you about. Even if it's litigation or even if any other careers, these are things that these are transitional skills that you will keep in handy throughout your life. And with law school, it depends on which law school you go to. Especially if you're going to say to the top tier NLUs or say the Jindal or Symbiosis, there's a strong level of competition also, which you need to also keep in mind, where you are competing amongst the best, right, for the best jobs. So you have to manage your expectations and your ability throughout these 5 years. Your day will typically start with you attending lectures, and after that you would be doing your extracurricular activities or preparing for your research assignments, or either traveling to a moot court location or a competition, or interacting with or going for a student exchange program. Top law schools also have that, where you can do a semester abroad. So this is essentially what you would be doing in a law school. And if you have any questions regarding law school, apart from how to get into that, because that's the next slide, you can ask them now. Anna, is there anything?
Not yet, but a lot of questions are coming which are related to our next slide. That is, what are some important traits to have as a lawyer? So, Ayush, do you want to talk about some important traits to have as a lawyer? Especially, can you just talk about how it's different for a criminal lawyer or litigator or corporate lawyer? What are the important traits to have?
Right. I'll tell you what the underlying traits are fairly common for everybody. The underlying traits that you need to have. And these are not something that you possess it. You don't need to possess them already. This is something which can be developed, right? Nobody in their first year can say that, okay, I have all the traits, or in their 10th or 12th. So this comes from practice. This comes from a mindset. I think one of the first traits you need to have is being extremely curious, right? So if there is anything that you have a question, like for example, if you are reading the newspaper, and for example, if there's some environment law issue, so Mishika, I think, yes, Mishika, then you need to probably go into the depths of what is happening, what are the facts, what is the law regarding that, is what steps are the other companies taking. So you need to be extremely curious to make sure that the pool of knowledge that you have keeps on growing, and you do not limit, because that will only broaden your horizon to tackle various issues. Further, you need to also have a lot of research skills. That is something that a lawyer really needs to have, where you keep on at this level also, where you are in your 10th or 12th. You can start off as basic as just Google whatever you're curious about, and read newspaper articles. I'm not asking you to do legal research, because of course you'll learn that in law school, but you need to be very curious, and that will make sure that you are up to date about all the issues. You need to be very aware as a person. Apart from that, I'm sure Shravani will also attest this fact that when you start your professional journey, as specifically a lawyer, most of the times people will come to you, apart from a corporate setup where somebody is distressed, right? If you are a person, if an individual is approaching you, they will come when they are distressed, or they have been wronged, or they want to exercise their rights. So it's very important how to interact with a particular person, to make sure that you are somebody who is empathetic enough to make sure that they feel comfortable confiding in you, to make sure that you make them confident enough that this person is going to get the job done for me. At the same time, your interpersonal skills need to also include you being quick on your feet, how you interact with your team, how you work as a team player. All these things really are very important when you work for a company or for a law firm. Right, Shravani?
Yeah, absolutely, Ayush. And I feel the last point that you spoke about your interpersonal skills, I think those skills are they're not spoken about quite often, because even through your law school days, you have to make sure that you make yourself a likable person. And I don't mean it in any negative context, but I'm just saying that in order to maintain your network, because at the end of the day, your network is going to pay off really well. For example, Ayush and I, we know it's a very, very small community. We have a lot of mutual friends like that. So you never know when your network is going to come to your use, which is why I feel that even within your law school days, during your law school days, you should make sure that you take part in as many activities as possible to develop your network, to make sure that you build the kind of relationships that would pay off in the future. And even during your internships, like, you must make sure that you read newspapers, that you are a curious person. Like Ayush mentioned, a very important trait, like to just be generally aware about things and the ability to make conversation with the other people. These are soft skills which are necessary for not just lawyers, but in every profession, because your legal knowledge can only help you up to a certain extent. But what really makes a difference is your soft skill and your interpersonal skills. So yeah.
Right, and especially what Shravani said regarding this being an extremely small community. So that is something that you need to keep in mind, because, and I think this is advice that I wish I would have gotten earlier, because in your earlier years where you're interning, you seem to be very relaxed also sometimes, or you do not probably have the foresight as to how you would be perceived in the future. But like, for example, if I want to apply for a job at X place, and somebody knows Shravani, it is a matter of fact that they will ask Shravani that, do you know Ayush? How does he work?
Yeah.
It will happen, and vice versa. And it's a very small community. And what people say when somebody asks the question that, how is he or how is she? Will she work properly? Will she be able to be in the team? That answer also, apart from how your interview has gone, assists the fact of whether you are going to get that job or not.
Yeah.
So please keep that in mind from your day one.
Yeah.
Make sure that you are extremely presentable throughout.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you're going to be ending up working for these people, for your law firms or your company, for around 18, 19 hours a day. So apart from just work, you need to be able to be friends with these people, and you need to be liked and be likable. So it's all about being a team player. It's all about working in a community together and being of value, of course. That's the most important.
Right.
Yeah.
For another suits reference, you cannot be that arrogant. For another suits reference, you cannot be that arrogant.
Yeah.
You can't be a Louis Litt in real life.
You can once you're a partner, probably. I don't know. We will not know. We have met a couple of Louis Litts, so we don't know.
Right. So we had a very good question from Sakshi Khanna. She said that she's a very emotional person, and like, how do you deal with your principles at a point where you know your client is wrong and yet you have to defend?
Right. With that, I think this comes into play a lot more when you are not doing work for corporate clients, and when you are especially in your criminal law. Right. So with that, it's very clear, right? If you see old interviews of Ram Jethmalani and everything, he makes it very clear that the Advocates Act also tells you that you cannot merely not take a case of any particular person just because it will make you unpopular, right? That is the underlying objective. And it is not your job to understand who's guilty and who's not guilty. It's only the court's job. And in fact, by not providing your legal services as a lawyer, you are taking away that person's right to be defended, right? So leave that up to the
Yeah.
court. Your job is very clear as a lawyer, where you have to defend your client, and you also have an ability to choose that if you feel that something does not agree with your fiber or your moral or your morals, you should not do it. Like, for example, when I worked for a steel and mining company, where we did fight a lot of environment law cases, where I would be defending the so-called polluter, right? But at the same time, in my head, I know for a fact that although I am extremely environmentally inclined, there has to be a balance in my head about what is required for the economy, for the business, and at the same time the environment. So you draw your own personal lines. I drew mine, therefore I could do my job. And if at any point you feel that this is anything makes you uncomfortable, then you should not do it, and you can try something else. There's no dirt of work when it comes to being a lawyer. Right, Shravani, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely what you said, like you draw your own lines, but you have your own personal convictions. Obviously, nobody's forcing you to take up a case or to defend a person when you know that they're wrong. But I should also highlight this fact that although there might be practices in place, but from what I've seen and from what I know, like there are hardly any lawyers who will enable their client to break the law. Breaking the law is not something that we enable. We just work around the law. If there is a loophole, that is our job. That is where we come in. We look at the act. We look how we could use a certain gap in the law to pave our way through. And as lawyers in the law firm, what we do is that we present options to our clients, and it is the commercial decision of the client to go ahead with the option or not. So yeah, we don't enable to break the law. We just work around it.
When I say we are enablers, we don't that you need to remember that we don't enable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I think we've answered most of the questions that have come. Moving on, let's talk about the entrance into a law school. So Ayush, do you want to take lead?
Right. So it really doesn't depend on what subjects you've taken in 12th, right? You can take arts, science, commerce, and all these subjects will help you appreciate different angles of law or different fields of law better. So divide your law schools into various categories and into various government and private categories, right? So at the top, you have these NLUs. Now, the NLUs are national law schools, and not all national law schools are at the top. There would be typically your NLSIU Bangalore, NALSAR, NLU Delhi is separate, right? Which else, Shravani? Which is the third one?
NUJS,
NUJS, and all these NALSAR, of course. And so for these top universities, you would have to give CLAT. Now, CLAT is a common law entrance test. The pattern of these tests keep on changing. However, we will talk about what common preparation you would have to do for all instead of going one by one, because the format keeps on changing, and what we prepared for and the paper that we appeared for might be completely different to what you would probably attend.
Yeah.
The second abbreviation you can see on your screen is 𝐼LIT, which is an entrance exam for NLU Delhi, which is also a top law school. You can consider that in your top 5, top 6. Then you have SLAT, which is for Symbiosis Law School, which is a private law school, and it ranks in the top 10 law schools in the country. Similarly, for Shravani's law school, which is OP Jindal University, you have LSAT, and it's along with OP Jindal, you have other private law schools also that you can get into by appearing for this exam. And which was the last one? Wait, I can't see this. Wait.
MHC.
Yes, that is for local colleges in Maharashtra, which includes Government Law College, which is a very, very good law school in Maharashtra. So essentially, you need to know that although which law school you go to doesn't determine your career, but of course, the amount of a head start that you would get getting into NLUs or SIMBI or NLU Delhi or OP Jindal University is substantial, and it is enough for you. It is substantial enough for you to start preparing very seriously. So regarding the subjects which you probably need to look at are general knowledge, logical reasoning, legal reasoning, English, and maths. Right, Arnav? Is there anything else?
Yeah, perfect.
Right.
All of that.
So,
And maths, an important thing is that maths is not is just till basic maths, around 10 standard maths. That's the level of
only
maths
for
that we get.
do all these exams have maths?
No,
In a way
LSAT
they do.
doesn't.
LSAT doesn't, right? Yeah, I
LSAT
remember.
doesn't.
LSAT
Thank
doesn't.
God. Thank God LSAT didn't, because I wouldn't have not been in cinemas otherwise. So,
And SAT doesn't have a particular section for mathematics, but they have included it in analytical reasoning. So in
Yeah.
a way, you need to practice maths.
right.
You
So
need
you
a
need
basic
to
stats
realize that.
knowledge.
Yeah. So you need to realize that how you prepare for this, right? So for general knowledge, there is nothing general about general knowledge, right? It is specific. It is very specific, and you cannot prepare for general knowledge in, say, a week, right? You will have to get into the habit of reading your newspapers, and not and which newspapers. Like, you have to read the Hindu, you have to read Economic Times, and you have to get into the habit of reading essentially for general knowledge. Apart from that, your major world events are something that you need to look at. Apart from that, your legal and logical reasoning. Now, it's not these questions are not essentially about whether you can solve these problems, because of course you will be able to once you understand how it's done, but it's about how fast you do them. So that is something you can only achieve by keeping on practicing till you get there. I think Shravani has extensively practiced and prepared for these exams, so she can go into details.
Yeah.
And with English, all of us have studied in GEAAA, so there is a lot of emphasis that is already there, and your foundationals would be very good. So you just have to make sure that while this entire process of reading and preparing happens, you do not neglect English as a subject, because that is where you can score more marks, because your base would be good studying in GEAAA.
Yeah. And guys, with GK, there's one thing that you need to keep in mind, like along with obviously reading the newspapers, you have to, there's a very important source called the UPSC also. You've got various magazines, that Competition Success Review, Manorama. You've got all these magazines which help the UPSC aspirants in terms of current affairs and GK, the static GK as well. So just keep an eye out on those, and remember that it's a consistent process in terms of GK. Ayush also pointed out that GK can't be covered within a week, but if you do it right and if you do it consistently for say like for 6 months, 8 months or so, there is no way you're going to go wrong with GK. You just have to be consistent with it. So yeah.
I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions regarding entrances, and I'm sure Arnav, you also a law aspirant. So if there's anything that you all want to ask in particular at this stage, let's answer those.
Yeah, so we've got one question. Is it compulsory to take maths to become a lawyer after 10th? So it's not at all compulsory it's a stream neutral field. So you can enter into law having any field or any career of the subject choices that you have.
Right.
There's one thing there's one thing I want to add to this question, because I think someone also asked how essential is maths for a lawyer. So it depends. If you're pursuing, say, litigation, or if you're pursuing policy advocacy, it is not necessary. But as a corporate lawyer, if you want to be an average lawyer, yeah, like it's you don't need to have maths. But I know some great lawyers who are also great with maths, because they are able to do liquidation preference calculation for a client. And if as a lawyer you're able to take the place of a CEO and a lawyer at the same time by having those math skills, there's nothing better than that. So while it is not essential to be good at math, it is always good to be proficient at math, because you will be able to cover the gap that an average lawyer won't be able to. So yeah, just wanted to point that out.
And to add to that, in fact, what I feel, since it's been 2 years since we're in the profession, I regret leaving maths early on, because GEAAA has that option. So I left it in 8th.
Yeah.
Right. And which was, I regret doing that completely. because I lost touch with fundamental concepts of maths. But
Yeah.
overall, you need to have that basic understanding also. Like, for example, say you're working for a company and you've come across a notice for say a 10 lakh rupee dispute. Now you need to understand that the company's interest is not to defend that lawsuit. It's to make sure that it keeps on making profits, right? So you need to understand a basic cost benefit as to how much cost are you going to spend in litigation or in any kind of dispute resolution, opposed to how much cost would you do settling it, right? So that basic commercial sense, trust me, I'm the correct person to tell you that maths is not extremely essential, right? Because I've lost touch long back and I still try to study, but it doesn't help a lot. But but what Shravani said is totally correct and on point. You need to have that basic commercial sense for any deal. Like if you're doing an M&A transaction and you're advising your client, of course they are going to have their accountants or their CAs to do that, but you would definitely have an additional edge if you can understand the commercials properly and give a right answer to that point.
Yeah. And even accounting for that matter, it's not just math, like even your basic accounting principles, like reading a P&L statement, a balance sheet, all of that will really help, especially
So for
when
due
it comes to
diligence,
your due
Shravani, you would
diligence.
have really read all of these.
Yeah,
right?
we had to, like the first thing that we were asked to do is to go to the annual report of the company and to read to make head and tail out of it. And since I'm not from a commerce background, it was very tough for me to get a hang of it. So it slowed down my process. So it's always good to have your basic math in place and also basic accounting skills. So yes.
But out of all the other professions, which are like typically like your MBA and your CA and all these, you don't require it as much. So if you don't know maths, don't be scared.
Yeah.
For an entrance exam and maybe you've dropped maths in 8th standard, it's not a considerable disadvantage or something like that. You can still
for sure.
appear and
The
get
weightage is
into
also less. The
a
weightage is
top
also
tier
less
law
for
school.
maths.
It's around 20%.
Yeah, it's just 10 marks in. Yes.
In fact, both Ayush and I
another-
dropped maths right in the 8th. So guys, it's not a deal breaker, so to say.
Thank God.
Yes. A very good question has come from Kamya. She asks, if one decides to pursue law abroad, how would one go about it? And will the degree be worth the student loans?
That's a very, very good question. That's a very good question. Shravani, you want to take that?
Yes. Kamya, see, while I don't know, I hardly know one or two Indian students who've decided to pursue their undergrad law degree abroad, and they have made their mind to settle. So what they did was they went to the UK, they got their degree in one of the colleges, I remember, and somebody also went to Canada, if I'm not wrong. But if you want to study law in India, there is an option. I think at least Jindal provided us to study Indian law until our 4th year, because law is a 5-year course. And in our 5th year, they asked us to go to, like, they asked the student to go to the US and start the US undergrad grad degree, which is called a JD. So JD in the US is the equivalent of BA LLB. And while it does cost a lot, if you're going to do your JD in the US, I think it's worth the benefit because you are equally qualified as an American lawyer. And doing a JD abroad is always compared to doing an LLM. So I would say that if it came to a choice of doing your undergrad from the US versus only your master's, I would strongly suggest that you do your JD as well, apart from just your master's. And yes, the cost of that is going to be very, very expensive. But if you really have made up your mind to go and settle abroad, I would recommend that you do a JD instead, because you will be eligible to get a job and you will be equivalent to that of an American lawyer. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. And if you have anything else, please feel free to ask.
Yeah, I think Kamya has a question.
Could you just
please
tell me what course that is? Because then I can like resource and sort of try to convince my parents.
I'm sorry?
She's talking about the Jindal course, the Jindal course where the 5th year you can go.
So Jindal offers you a normal BA LLB degree, but then there are options for students to pursue exchange programs. So this is open to all the students. While they pay the full fees of GEAAA, they will also in their fourth year have the option of applying to 2 or 3 colleges abroad. I think one is Columbia, one is Stanford, and the other one is Indiana University. So GEAAA has these partnership programs with such colleges where a student from GEAAA will be able to complete his degree, 5-year degree in 4 years, and pursue JD for 1 year in the US and continue pursuing his master's as well. So yeah, GEAAA has that option. So you could leave, you'll basically have your BA LLB degree at the end of your 4th year, and in your 5th year you'll be going to the US.
Right, and there are also various other ways where going abroad is possible. Say if you go to your the top tier law schools, there will be certain, and that this is very few, only a handful of Indian students get this opportunity, where some foreign law firm would come for placements, and then they can take you for a trainee contract or something like that. But that's, I think, 6 people, 5 people, 5-6 people in India, if I'm not wrong. Apart from that, doing an LLM, which is your master's in law, like how you, if you do a BCom, then you will do a MBA, it's similar. But there is a huge cost to that. You can do it from India, which is extremely cost effective. There is a huge cost to an LLM. Say if you do it from US, it can, depends on how you live, it can range from with your tuition from 70 lakhs to 90 or a crore, right? And for in UK, it can range from 30 to 60 lakhs. And of course, this depends on how you live and everything. But the issue with that personally is that there's no surety, or there's no surety of a job there, right? So you have to go and fight the odds there, and it is always a gamble. It is always a gamble because nobody's going to assure you a job there immediately. And of course, every country has its own visa restrictions and their own restrictions regarding that. But you can also find several other options where some other countries like Australia have a more friendlier immigration, not immigration essentially, but work policy for foreign nationals. Also, some European countries have that, like Germany and France. So you should also look at those. But yes, in terms of it being cost effective, please make sure that when you consider that, you consider the cost as a big point, because I know so many of my colleagues who went off to US to pursue their masters, spent say around north of 70-80 and came back without a job. So there is a real possibility to that also.
Yeah, and when you think about cost, it's going to be costly anyway, whether you pursue your JD or whether you pursue your LLM. But what you need to keep in mind is the cost benefit analysis. Yes. When you just do your master's, there is a very, very low possibility of you getting the returns on your investment, especially if you're going to countries such as the UK or the US. But if you do your JD from abroad, there is a high JD along with your LLM, there is a higher possibility of you bagging a job in the US and repaying your student loan faster. Yes. So yeah.
Yes, and of course there's a long-term game to this. It is a long-term game, of course. Like when, say, for example, you want to a company is looking to hire their top legal guy, or if a law firm is looking to hire a new partner, of course these accolades to your CV of an international experience definitely helps. And so now we are not only looking for something which is after 5 years, right? Since you will start your careers in the next 3 to 4 years, the world might not be same as to how they perceive candidates. Tomorrow, there might be a requirement that an LLM from a reputed university might be compulsory. It might be a compulsory threshold that a candidate has to reach. I am already seeing so many JDs, which is your job descriptions, where they write LLM is preferred, but you don't know in 20 years it can say LLM compulsory, right? So keep all those things in mind when you apply. Play the long game if you can. Make sure that if you can bear the cost, play the long game, of course.
Right. So we've talked about entrance directly after 12th. There's also a question regarding this. Can you elaborate a little about the 3-year law programs that colleges offer?
Right. Shravani, do you want to take this or should I?
Yeah, Ayush, go ahead.
Yeah. So there's no bar to do law if you've not started after 12th, right? So I'm assuming you would have been doing your graduation somewhere. There is also a 3-year course. But what you need to know is that the national law schools do not offer a 3-year course. You will have to go to these private colleges or other colleges like GLC. So now essentially what happens in these in the 3-year course is that whatever you've done across 5 years, whatever say Shravani and I did, it would be compressed into 3 years, where it would only be law and there'll be a lot of concentrated and focused learning. Although you need to know that before, like earlier, there used to be only a 3-year course. Like all these legal stalwarts like Harish Salve and Ram Jethmalani would have done a 3-year course only. This is something which has come in the recent past, and there's no bar to you getting into good places. Of course, at the same time, you need to be very aware of this fact that, say in symbiosis, I'll give you an example where you had placements for 5 years and you had placement for 3 years. So in the 3-year, the placements are definitely not as good as they would be for a 5-year LLB course. So this is a challenge that you will face. But otherwise, also apart from that, like if you focus from the start, you intern at the right places and make your mark because you already have developed and you have gained a graduation degree, you will be able to succeed as a lawyer.
Yeah. And guys, in all of this, I feel we've not addressed internships as much. Okay, so like when it comes to making a mark in your career, apart from your grades, the kind of institution that you graduate from, what is very, very important is your internship experience, because those 5 years, within those 5 years, you'll, I think, have 10 opportunities to intern. It is very, very important that you make the right use of it. You intern at the right places, build your contacts, get some networks, get some real life experience. And yeah, so.
Right. There was also a question about the license to, like if I get my degree from a college abroad, will I be allowed to practice in India as well?
I mean, I've not seen many people who've gotten their degrees from abroad without having a basic Indian degree. Like I will have to read up. Like I'm not aware if somebody will be able to just practice without having. Are you aware if somebody can give the bar without having a legal degree? An LLB
is compulsory,
right? Yeah.
For you to get enrolled in the bar. So how it works is that after you complete law school, of course, when you do it abroad, you will have to get back to you on that essentially. But what I know, LLB is compulsory, and once you finish law school, you do not automatically get enrolled in the bar council. So you need to give a separate exam for that, which every lawyer has to give to get enrolled in the bar, and only after that you can practice in the courts. But there are professions, so you need to understand that the Advocates Act also states that a lawyer cannot be an employee. So essentially somebody who is working in-house should not essentially enroll in the bar. So I am not enrolled in the bar because it would be a breach of that law. I would have to lie on oath and all of that. So you can also practice as a lawyer in companies without having being enrolled at the bar. So to answer your question, if you've say done your law from UK or from Australia, you can come here and work at companies. You can also work at law firms. However, to go to the court and to litigate in the court, you need to have a you need to have a LLB, and then you need to register in the bar.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there's one very relevant question. Do we need any extra degrees apart from LLB to become an international lawyer?
International lawyer can be of various types. There is a public international lawyer, and then you obviously have your international arbitration law, your other private law degrees. But yeah, obviously, like a master's will be helpful because a basic LLB degree might not be sufficient for you to gain that exposure. And while an LLM will not really replace real life work experience, it is always beneficial to have an LLM if you want to go and practice offshore. And yeah, apart from your LLM degree, you will also need that relevant work experience.
Obviously.
So while I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. So while your LLM is going to be necessary, you should always also focus on your relevant work experience, because that is going to be more important than your LLM degree, so to say.
All right. So let's move on. So these are basically the 5-year integrated courses that are offered by a majority of the law schools. Ayush, do you want to take us through them?
Right. So, like it was discussed earlier, that you can club your law degree with a host of degrees, but you need to understand that the NLUs only offer you a BA LLB course. Other colleges like Symbiosis will offer you a BBA and a BA. Say a GLC will offer you BSc LLB also. So you need to look at what you want as your accompanying degree. Say, for example, when you do BBLLB, although Shravani and I have done BLLB, we were just discussing that we would have been better off doing BBLLB because it helps, it gives you the knowledge of what one would be doing in a BBA setup, understanding commerce better, understanding what the companies would want better, and understanding business administration better. So always, obviously, when you start your 5 years, which is after 12, you would not have the foresight normally that where do you want to end up. And you should go with open book also, I would suggest that, but you would not have a foresight that I want to become a corporate lawyer only, or I want to go into litigation. So in that case, it essentially doesn't matter a lot. But if you have certain inclinations, so trust your gut in terms of that, like if your gut is inclined towards BBA or towards corporate law, then go for BBA LLB. Similarly, if you want to say probably get into litigation, then a BA LLB helps. If you want to get into politics, BA LLB helps. You learn pol science also, and a lot of these ancillary subjects. With BCom LLB, essentially you can take it as same as BBA LLB. It's essentially the same thing. What else? BSc LLB, I have not met anybody who's done that. It's a very specific, it's a very niche field. But yeah, I think it's very clear, like you follow your gut, follow your instincts, and decide what accompanying degree you want.
Right. Moving on, we will talk about the scope after graduation. So there are a lot of fields that you can go after you've graduated from law school. Shravani, can you take us through them?
Yeah. So after graduation, like, I think we've spoken enough about corporate law, but just to give a little bit of insight into what all these terms are. General corporate law deals with let's first start off with insolvency and restructuring. So when a company essentially has a lot of debt and it's unable to repay its debt, you see that the company has become insolvent. And in such a case, some of the debt in some cases is converted into equity. So that is basically restructuring your debt into equity so that it ceases to become debt. So this is just like a bird's eye view of what insolvency and restructuring is. There are various laws applicable to such processes. You've got the SARFAC, you've got the IBC, and you also have some sections of the Companies Act dealing with it. Then you've got dispute resolution. Within dispute resolution, actually dispute resolution should also fall into litigation, I would say, because at least in the Bombay circuit, this is how it works. That most of the arbitration and dispute lawyers are also litigators. But yeah, to give you an oversight of what dispute resolution is, it can be of two types. It can either be litigation, which is going to courts or tribunals and resolving a dispute before a judge, or it can be an out-of-court settlement, such as arbitration, conciliation, or mediation, where you resort to a procedure which is court-like but not really a court. So that is what dispute resolution is. And mergers and acquisition is when two companies decide to come together, or when one company decides to buy a stake of another company. So these are all huge transactions, which most of the lawyers usually do mergers and acquisitions. And mergers and acquisition also forms a subset of general corporate. So your general corporate law will be all encompassing. It'll have your mergers and acquisitions. It'll have capital markets such as, your IPOs or further public offerings issuances. It'll have media and entertainment. It will also have banking, finance, and project finance. And yeah, banking and finance is also one very important practice areas in corporate law. You've got various subsets within that. Also, you've got project finance, you've got acquisition finance, real estate finance. So all of these sound like heavy names. They're essentially very similar. It's only the sector that differs between all of them. So this is your corporate law practice area. Then moving on to litigation, you've got family law, intellectual property, civil and criminal. So family law can also be your trust, your settlements, like, divorce and adoption, wills. Intellectual
Domestic
property
violence.
will have, I'm sorry, Ayush?
Domestic violence and all these
Yes,
points also.
domestic violence. So although that will also get subsumed within criminal law, it also forms a huge part of family law. Then you've got intellectual property law, which deals with copyright, trademarks, and patents. And that is also a very, very booming practice area, given that tech law is becoming such a big thing. So is privacy. So privacy, tech law, media and entertainment, and IP, all of them form a cohesive practice area called the TMT, telecommunication, marketing, and telemedia. Then you've got civil law. Civil law can be your basic property law, and for example, trust. Your 𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐸 Education Academy is a trust, so that would form a part of civil law. Your property, for example, real estate will also form a part of civil law. Then criminal law is your IPC, basically murders, your fraud, cheating, rapes, violence, all of that will fall under the umbrella of criminal law. And all of these laws, these are most of the lawyers who practice these laws are litigators, because there is very little transaction that takes place within family law and criminal law. So which is why we call these practice areas litigation oriented practice areas. Then you've also got the judiciary. So apart from just being a lawyer who goes and argues in courts, one can also write exams and become a judge. But most of the judges who sit in the High Court are former advocates. So these are lawyers who have been practicing in the High Court as advocates for years and years, and then they have been invited to the bench. But if you want to become a judge right from the start, you will be able to write exams, the judiciary exams, and you will be able to practice in the lower courts. Although statistically there are very few judges who have been elevated from your lower court, such as the Sessions Court or the Civil Court, and been promoted to the High Court. Most of the High Court lawyers are ex-practicing advocates. And then you have all your miscellaneous practice areas such as journalism, research and writing, content creation. Then you can also get into academia. And for academia, one of the most essential requirements is a master's degree. So for those of you who are inclined towards, making a career in writing, teaching, and philosophy of law, being a doctorate, then you should definitely think about an LLM right from the beginning. And during your law school activity should focus more towards writing and research. And you can also get into the civil services. That's also one very, very popular career path chosen by many lawyers or law students in general. So yeah, anything else, Ayush, that you want to add?
No, I think you've covered everything. And I think at this point, if there are any specific questions regarding any of the fields or anything that we have discussed earlier, Arnav, you can go ahead with that.
Right. So there was a very interesting question about international law and how to get into international law, what's its relevance, just a little insight on international law. Any one of you can take it.
Shravani, can go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Sienna, when you speak about international law, it is not a law in itself, okay? International law can be of various types. You can have, the minute something becomes offshore, okay, the minute you start dealing with a party who's outside India, it becomes international law. So if you're talking about public international law in general, there isn't really a body of law that is in force. Most of it is practice. and most of them are decisions which are not really enforceable. So yeah, International Court of Justice, although it is a judicial body, I'm not sure about the degree of its enforcement. It can only have a convincing power. So while there is a lot of work and research that goes into all of it, within international law, you can specialize in human rights. For example, there was a tribunal in Rwanda for the African crisis that was happening. There was a lot of human rights violation happening in Africa. There are people who are working in Libya from like my law school. There were people who were working in Israel and people who were working in like the northern east part of the country. So within international law, you can either venture into human rights, you can venture into public international law, which is law between the countries, which deals with your treaties and statutes. Then you can also get into private international law, which is your dispute settlement. So most of your arbitrations are like high stake arbitrations are seated within London and sometimes Singapore. So most of the arbitration and dispute resolution lawyers, they go abroad, they practice, they do their arbitration abroad, and they come back to India. So if you want to do private international law, I would say you should start focusing on arbitration. And otherwise, you can leave Indian law behind and start and think about going and working in a foreign law firm. Right now, foreign law firms are not allowed to set up base in India. So for somebody who wants to work, like for non-Indian clients, I think the best bet would be to go and work in a foreign country such as the UK, US. It's not that easy for say an Indian law degree holder, but that would be one of their best options. So while they won't be practicing international law, they will be dealing with international clients and little with Indian law. I hope that answered your question. Was there anything specific that somebody wanted me to answer?
No, it was related to international corporate law. So I think you've covered that part particularly.
Okay.
So if anyone has
have people ask a question directly also, that would also be great if you all can just
Yeah.
unmute yourself and probably switch on your mic.
Yeah.
So I'll just stop sharing at this point of time, and we can have an open conversation with everyone.
Guys, please feel free to ask as many questions.
Right. So we have a question from Sakshi. She asked, just a second. Yeah. So what if I complete my 3-year law course, practice for a few years, and then want to settle abroad? How can I continue my career?
Sakshi.
Let me
Okay,
get
sorry.
that clear. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you want to do your 3 years course, practice for a few years. When you say practice, what kind of practice you want to do, Sakshi?
Sakshi, you can
Sakshi,
unmute
you can unmute. You can talk to me directly. Yes. Focusing on corporate law, right? So, like Shravani said, that if you do your 3 years, you work at a law firm or you work in house, and then you can probably do your masters abroad, where you can try your luck at getting a job there. That is one way you can move abroad. Apart from that, there are other law firms, other international law firms also, which although it's very rare, but if you're good enough with your entire profile, you can get placed at these international law firms. So that is how you can take your career ahead.
So can I like become an in-house lawyer after I've studied law in India, practiced for like 3 to 4 years, and say I'm hoping to get into corporate law only? So can I just like through the company, if my company has a position abroad, is it feasible to go out there and just settle and work in the same company or a different company? And that perspective is my thoughts.
Right. It is extremely possible. Like it is possible, but it obviously depends on a lot of variables, right? So your company has to have a presence abroad. There has to be a vacancy in that a country, and they should feel the need to send somebody from India there instead of taking a locally qualified person. Your accolades or your CV needs to match that criteria. So there is a lot of ifs and buts, but theoretically speaking, this is possible. And it's not that it doesn't happen. We've seen it happen. I have seen it happen. Right.
Yeah,
so you can try that.
So actually, also one thing that you need to keep in mind is that if you do end up getting such an opportunity, which I mean, it is quite common. Like I've seen a couple of people do it. Usually, these people go for certain projects. So although it is not a long-term thing, it's a very short-term thing. But if you want to settle abroad, your game plan has to be longer than just that something. You'll have to think about getting licensed in that country, so that in case tomorrow you want to quit your existing job, you are employable to say an outside recruiter as well. So if your end goal is to settle abroad, I think your best bet would be to get an undergrad degree over there abroad, get qualified, get licensed, and start working as soon as you can. But obviously, having said that, there have been instances where people have worked in Indian law firms or like in-house corporations for like say 5 or 6 years, and then gotten an opportunity to go and work abroad. And even after going there, sometimes they have this condition that like within like say 2 or 3 years, if you're joining us, you will have to get licensed in that country. So yeah.
So do I have to like go through a proper LLM course over there and then get the license, or is there some sort of examination that I can write, and then if I clear that particular set of exams, because I'm already practicing in India?
So if you're already practicing in India and you're also going to be pursuing your LLM abroad, usually how it happens is that, for example, in the US or Canada, you finish your LLM, you take some time off to prepare for your bar, because over there the bar is very, very tough. And then you get licensed to practice. But the main challenge that people face is when it comes to placements. Not a lot of people or law firms are willing to recruit Indian graduates with just an LLM. They would prefer somebody with their basic undergrad law degree, which is the JD. Which is why I've been stressing on why JDs like would be preferred if your long-term game plan was to settle abroad. So then I would suggest that you'd rather go for a JD than go for your master's. Although it is possible to get a job, I would say it would be easier to do so if you were a JD student and not an LLM student, because an LLM is just a year, and 1 year is too less for you to establish a base over there, get your network sorted, apply to places, intern over there, because by the time the season of recruitment, by the time your LLM begins, your recruitment season for that year is already over in most of the cases. So a JD just buys you more time.
Right, and I think you need to have a specific thought process as to which country you want to go for. Every country has its different requirements. It's easier in some, it's more difficult in the others. So you get more clarity on which country you want to go to, and especially when you're looking at a switch from an in-house, you need to look at which companies enable that kind of a flexibility. So aim to get a job at companies that will give you international exposure, or at least there would be Indian corporates that work on say issues that are common, or transactions which are common, where you would get exposure on working on international transactions. So that will help you or increase your chances of going abroad.
Yeah.
Okay, then I think after I've got into law, like I am currently studying third year BMS from Lala's College. So after I get into law, I'm definitely getting in touch with both of you to guide me further.
Of course. You can get in touch with us whenever. I think there will be a WhatsApp group also. And throughout law school, and even after that, you can definitely reach out to us.
Yeah.
Right. So there's another question. I'm in 9th right now, and can you suggest some good classes which will help me become a litigator?
You are in 9th right now. You do not need to be a litigator right now. But apart from that, like it's
I want
amazing.
to be a good litigator.
That's
so I want
amazing.
to be a criminal lawyer.
That's amazing. That if that kind of clarity you have in 9th, it's amazing. I wish I was more like that. But frankly, so you need to start preparing probably for your people. Start from 10th. You can start early on. Start preparing for your entrances in for a good law school. But at the same time, what I would say, that don't look at it as being a litigator is not something which is taught in class, right? Being a litigator is something that you develop over the years by observing people in the court, by understanding how people are arguing, by understanding what is the thought process. So I would strongly recommend start preparing for your law school by taking some good classes. But at the same time, if you have this kind of a zeal and if you have this kind of a motivation, there is nothing that stops you from going to a court. Or if you know any other any family relative who's a lawyer who would help, who would allow you to accompany
Yes,
him or
sir.
her to court.
There's one uncle in my family
Yes,
who's a
and
judge in
please
the
call
High
me
Court.
Ayush. Please call me Ayush. And if you have an uncle in the High Court, then it's
Yes, sir.
pretty sorted.
His father is a judge and he's a lawyer.
Right. So that you have somebody, right? So ask them that if is it okay if I can accompany them? And frankly, I'm telling you that when you sit and hear all these stalwarts argue, you realize that there's some basic points how they present it for the court and how the judge appreciates or disproves of what they are saying. So with that basic observation, you'll learn a lot. So don't rely on classrooms. I would recommend. However, do rely on them for preparing for your entrance to get into a good law school. Right, Shravani?
Yeah.
Do you have
And
any-
yeah, I just had one point. If you've really decided that you want to do litigation, you should also, like, if you want to do litigation in the Bombay High Court, because litigating in Bombay and Delhi, like, these are the main places where people litigate, it's a very different experience. So from a practical perspective, I think more than a good law school, you should, like, obviously learning the law is important, but your main learning and your main litigation journey is going to take place outside your law school. So it's important for you to know how to move. It's important for you to have your basic legal knowledge in place, which is why, like, a law school will help you. Your best bet would be to go and intern under a good lawyer right from the beginning. So I would also suggest that you target law schools that are either in Delhi or Bombay, where you will also be able to intern at the same time. Because if I'm not wrong, classes start at say 7 and they end at 10. So after your classes, you'll be able to go and intern at the court. Because I know a lot of people who are doing litigation who have done such a thing, and they've been able to get a good head start over their peers just because they were at the right place at the right time and they interned under the right people.
Right. And if you want to do this in Bombay, GLC is the college where you can do that because they promote a culture. It's the best.
Yeah.
Trust me. In
It's
fact,
the
you would
best for
spend
litigation.
a
Thank you so
lot
much.
lesser. You will spend a lot lesser than you would do at the other colleges that we are talking about.
Yeah.
And they have a very encouraging atmosphere where they let you go intern. So if that is the outlook, you should definitely look at this as an
Yeah.
option.
Even the alumni of GLC is very decorated. So
Oh,
they
yes,
help you.
absolutely.
I think Kamya has a question. Kamya.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, because Jindal is a really reputed college, apart from good grades, what extracurriculars or like external exams should I prepare for in 11th and 12th? Because right now I'm mainly focused on my boards, which I think I should be. But in 11th, 12th, what can I do?
I didn't quite catch that question. Was it for Ayush or?
I think it was for
Please
you.
repeat the
It was
question.
basically that she wants to get into Jindal, I think.
Oh, okay. So you want to know what you need. Could you please repeat your question again, Kamya, please? I'm really sorry.
Yeah. Like, I understand that good grades would be the top criteria, but like apart from that, what extracurriculars and like external exams like IMO and stuff, what could I do to, stand apart from the others?
Okay, so apart from just your grades, I would say that you focus on debating. Debating will do two things to you. Will improve your oral and speaking skills. You'll be able to speak well. You'll be able to think on your feet, and you'll be able to go out for competitions, meet different people from different law schools, and that is how you'll build your network. Another thing that you can do is do a moot court, like a moot court competition, where you'll be able to live a case and a dispute. So all your skills, such as legal, like your drafting skills, your legal research skills, your speaking skills, all of them will be tested. And then I also recommend that you start writing papers, because that is how you learn the law. That is how you learn to read the law, and you're able to critically analyze it. And this will help you in your journey, like as an advisor. So yeah, while these three things are very, very important and crucial, apart from that, I would also say that you should if you are interested in corporate law, then I suggest that you also look at a CS degree. Like while it is not essential, it's always good to have one. You get familiar with the Companies Act, you get familiar with the procedure. So yeah, all of these activities and a CS degree can be considered if you want to get into corporate law. For litigation, especially, I don't think there's any other course or an exam that you need to write, but just like good internships with like reputed lawyers and like good learning experience is what will help you.
So Shravani, in Jindal specifically, apart from that, apart from the exam, is there a round 2 where you have to write any essay or a personal interview?
At my time, yeah, I had to write an SOP. One was because I had also applied for a scholarship, so they required an SOP at that point of time, but there wasn't an interview as such. But
Okay, right.
I'm sure that given the number of people that are applying, I feel they have kind of become a little longer in their process to select students.
Right, because at Symbiosis we had to write an essay and give an interview. So in order to reach Jindal, of course, what Shravani has said, you can add these feathers to your cap where you can be a good debater and all the other ancillary things, but you can find out specific requirements of colleges that you are targeting for, or if they have a round 2, and probably practice or do certain mock sessions to make sure you crack that also.
Okay, so you want to know how to crack the LSAT, not exactly what to do when you're in Jindal. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. So no, like basically, what Ayush said, like you need to. So for example, Jindal has a very rich culture of debating and moves. So you need to be a generally well-read person. We give a lot of importance to your BA subjects. If you're going to be doing BA, then I would suggest Jindal is the best place for you to be doing your BA LLB degree because the professors are really good. So you start by reading literature. For example, if you're interested in feminism or critical theory, then you start reading authors like Simone de Beauvoir or like any subject area that you're interested in. Just start reading up on that so that it'll be easier for you to blend and gel in. And obviously, like being aware, because I said Jindal has a very, very rich debating culture. That's all.
I hope, Kamya, your question is answered.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I do have confidence now because I do like take part in reading too much feminist literature. So I do feel a little too confident.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks. We have another question. Hiti, she says she's in 9th standard who wants to pursue in mergers and acquisition as a career and corporate law to a company. Can you give some tips as well?
Right. So in 9th standard, again, like I told you, it's amazing that you have this kind of a foresight. But for you to probably understand the intricacies, you would have to learn the law. But at this stage, particularly, I would recommend that when you are reading about, say, a transaction, which transaction have you read about recently? Like for example, the Amazon future deal, or any of these transactions that make the headlines. Just read about them and try to make sense of them. Do basic Google search as to what happened in that particular deal. Probably in 9th standard, you can focus on the facts and understand that how these deals happen commercially based on the information you have online, and then you can graduate into understanding the details of the law behind it. That is what I would personally recommend. Right, Shravani? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, like from the 9th grade, I would say like reading your papers, and not just for corporate law, but for every sort of like practice area that you want to venture into, you start by reading the papers because you become generally aware. You understand how companies work. You read interviews or you watch interviews of CEOs or corporate lawyers. So yeah, I would say that would be a good head start if you're in your 9th grade.
Especially join LinkedIn and follow these tier 1 law firms, because they keep on advertising that, okay, we've been a part of so and so deal and so, and then you can see personally if some deal catches your eye, they tag the people who worked in that deal, so you can then probably go onto the profile and see what have they done and what is the kind of experience they have to be able to do that deal. So that is how you can probably understand that if you're looking at yourself as an M&A lawyer, you will see that you will understand what all you have to do to get there. So
Yeah,
please make
and
sure you
also
join.
like not, and don't just restrict yourself to Indian law firms. I feel like since like the profession is booming, in order to make a difference, it's always good to be a little different. I would suggest that also go to like all your foreign matrix circle law firms, look at their website, because they come up with great articles and great content. It's very insightful. And India usually is like 1 or 2 years behind the West. So like you would be reading up for the future if you are keeping track of what's happening outside India. So yeah.
Right. I hope that answers your question. Thanks a lot. So this question, there's a question of difference between lawyer and solicitor and the exams. I'd just like to add a little to it as well. So could both of you explain to us the difference between a lawyer, advocate, solicitor, and attorney? These four are almost used interchangeably while describing a person who's pursuing law.
Right,
Yeah.
Shravan, you-
Yeah, sure. So let me just clarify one thing. Attorney is not a concept that is used extensively in India. It has been imported from the West again, because in the US, a lawyer is called an attorney. They don't have advocates. We've got advocates. Advocates are lawyers who are people who have qualified their, who have achieved or obtained their LLB degree and have been admitted to the bar. And to get qualified, you become an advocate under the Advocates Act. So there is an exam that you give. There is, so that's called the bar exam. So the minute you pass your bar exam, an advocate. Now, a solicitor is very different from an advocate. A solicitor is a concept that is restricted to only Bombay. It is, I believe it's the Bombay Law Society. To give the solves, you have to first article under a solicitor for 1 or 2 years. You have to complete your articleship and you have to give your solicitor's exam. From what I've heard about it, it is a very, very, time consuming and a strenuous exam because it is very theory based. So yeah, you can give your SOLS exam and become a solicitor. But when you do become a solicitor, you can't go to court. You stick to solicitor's law firm. You draft, you plead, but you don't go to a court. And a lawyer is any person who has completed his BA LLB degree, and they might or might not be enrolled with the bar. So
Right.
yeah, I
And
think
especially
that
with
answers your
solicitors,
question.
like the amount of time it takes to become one.
Yeah.
There is not, frankly, since it's only a Bombay thing, I have frankly not seen anybody gaining a lot career-wise by just becoming a solicitor. So, but obviously, it's
Yeah.
another feather on your cap. It's good if you have that.
But I don't think nowadays, since like
Yeah,
you've got all
nowadays
your
focus is on the
NLUs and you've got Bangalore, Delhi, and all these places also booming. I don't think solicitors is going to be a huge thing going forward.
Great. So I think we've answered almost all of the questions here. If anyone has any more questions, they can put it on the chat box, unmute their mics and ask us.
Yes, we would prefer somebody unmuting their mic or switching on their camera and asking
Yeah.
anything directly. That would be great.
Right. Mehak, you can ask your question.
Actually, I wanted to ask that I've heard from some people that in criminal law that there's girls exploitation, like they are not that good towards girls, or like there's discrimination towards girls. So is there something like that?
Um. See, yeah. Hi, Mehak. Like, I don't have a lot of experience with criminal law, but I know a few people very closely who pursued criminal law. One of them is a girl, and while there is no discrimination, at least in Bombay, like from the circles that I've moved in, there is no discrimination. But like litigation in generally is like, I don't want to make this an issue, but it is like statistically speaking, it is a male-dominated profession at the end. Like, and while there may be, instances where women have been exploited, I'm sure that it is not just restricted to criminal law. It might be happening at a lot of other places. Maybe what you have heard was only restricted to criminal law. So frankly speaking, criminal law in itself is not exploitative towards girls. And from what I know, like I know a lot of people who practice, and I'm sure that even they have not like although these things are heard of, we've not seen them happen. But while like I've not seen it happen with the people that I know. So yeah, while that possibility can't be ruled out, it is definitely I mean it is a male dominated profession, but it can happen within criminal law. It can also happen in a law firm, so it is not restricted to a certain practice area.
Right, and the space is getting better day by day. The
Yeah.
facilities for women are getting better. The recognition for women are getting better. Like if you see just today, three ladies were sworn in. Three judges were sworn in for Supreme Court, which has never happened before. Three together being sworn in. So the space is getting better. And with more and more female lawyers joining, it should go to a place where it's an equal opportunity and an equal work environment for everybody. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Can you please not call us sir and ma'am? Thank you. Yes.
Please go ahead.
I think there will be one more question.
You can unmute yourself and ask the questions. Not me. All right. Since there are no further questions, I'd like to thank everyone here. Especially, I'd like to put out a special mention for Mishika. She had her camera on throughout the session from the beginning till the end, and it's very empowering, and it makes everyone, especially the speakers, feel good when they're talking, because they're not just talking to a laptop screen. They're talking to actual people who are interested in what they're saying. So it helps a lot. Thank you so much for taking out the time and being here, asking your questions, asking your doubts. Thank you to Ayush and Shravani for taking out their times in their very busy lives, like they've said, and helping each and every student, especially me, throughout the process. I've learned a lot about law and the details and the nitty-gritties of it. So thank you a lot. Thanks a lot, and over to you, Dhruv.
Right, like we mentioned earlier that we are glad that something like this is happening. We wish that it was there when we were in Gundecha. But like we said earlier, that this is a very small community, and now you as law aspirants are also a part of that community. So please make sure that, please know that you already have people who are from Gundecha. Not only us, there are a lot of other people who we can get you in touch with. If you want to pursue, for example, if somebody wants to do criminal law, we know somebody that way. If you want to do M&A, I think we can also help you out. So we can get you in touch with whoever you want to. So please feel free to reach out whenever. Of course, we might not be able to answer right away, but you can drop in a message or something, and we will definitely reach out to you even after this session. So know that you have somebody in this profession, because I think I don't know about Shravani, I'm not sure, but I think I'm a first generation lawyer, and it takes Shravani is also first generation lawyer, and it is obviously a challenge. So know that you have two people to count on.
Yeah. So yeah, guys, I mean exactly what I said. I think we covered it up. I'll just try to keep it short, but yeah, like it is a very, very small community, and the journey is going to be long. It's going to be 5 years, and 5 years is just the beginning. After the 5 years, the real journey starts. So, I mean, all the best. I'm sure all of you will do wonders. And obviously, Ayush and I are here in case you guys need any sort of advice or assistance, or just, a friendly chat. We're all here. So, yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for helping us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks. It was a pleasure.
Hi, speakers. Hi, Arnav. Thank you, participants, so much for attending. Thank you, Shravani and Ayush, for taking your time. It was quite an amazing event. We had a good participation also. It's nice to know that, Gundecha kids are interested. So many Gundecha kids are interested in being lawyers, or at least interested in the field. That's very nice. And guys, if you have any further questions, participants, then you can put it on the group, on the WhatsApp group, and we can forward those questions to our speakers and get them answered for you. And we'll also have this.
We've added Ayush and Shravani to the group. So
okay, perfect. Then they'll directly give you the answers. Sounds good. Okay. If there's nothing else, then I'd thank the participants once again and ask all the participants to leave. And I'll have to ask those speakers to stay back for a couple of minutes if possible.